Quick programming note, this was recorded before the Lamar Jackson news kind of turned a little south as far as his availability and practice, and before Duvernay broke his foot and we picked up Sammy Watkins from the waivers. So while that part of the news was not in the episode, the rest of it, which is mostly focused on the Falcons, their offense and their defensive capabilities, and that analysis holds true. So enjoy the rest of the episode.
Welcome back to One Winning Pod, where we are going to have Christmas Eve football this year, and hopefully the flock will get the Christmas present of getting to watch Lamar Jackson again, who is being hinted will give it a go, or at least attempt to, and hopefully we'll be back on the field, because even though these Falcons are not a very good football team this year, it really feels like we need him back out there, even against the worst of the NFL has to offer right now. So hopefully we can get Lamar back out there, and we can see some multiple touchdowns would be good from this team, right? It's been a bit.
I feel like it's settled for one at this point.
Sure.
But yeah, no, you're right. It's I think we've been getting reports for that for a couple of days now, that hinting that Lamar might come back for this game. I mean, it would fit the timeline. His PCL injury, I think we kind of assumed it might be a few weeks for him to come back. So it's been 2 games. Yeah, hopefully he's healed up well. It sounded like he actually didn't make the trip to Cleveland. They didn't want it to kind of flare up or anything. But yeah, hopefully we get to see him on the practice report sometime this week, and he'll be able to suit up. Definitely he would be sorely needed after the offense has kind of performed the last couple of weeks. So would be good to get him back out there healthy and change the narrative from last year, where we were kind of hoping that he might come back for the rest of the season, but ended up really not making a difference. So
yeah, I do think you're right, Chris, in your analysis of like, we need it back. I think we need to see, as a fan base, as an offense, as just a team in general right now, he's like our sign of hope. Like, I think if he comes back and we can see some corrections on the offense against a lesser opponent, I would honestly say, like, even against a lesser opponent, just like give us a little bit of positivity, give some touchdowns, maybe a wide receiver catches a touchdown. Which, by the way, if you said a wide receiver is going to catch a touchdown as a bold prediction until last week, I would have been like, that's ridiculous. But now that the stats are in front of me, I'm like, it's actually a valid bold prediction. Not that that will be mine, but it's just like, it's crazy that that's like something that we're asking for as a fan base and as a team. But I do think like it'll be just a huge plus to see him come back. And honestly, even if he's like rusty and doesn't look great, like an opportunity to shake the rust off against a lower opponent is better than the divisional opponents coming up. So I would really hope that he's able to suit up.
Yeah, definitely. And really, this would look like, on paper, an excellent game for him to come back on. You've got a team who's struggling this year from the South. He plays indoors, coming up to Maryland in late December, where there's going to be weather, and you're going to have a quarterback who will be starting their first NFL game on the road, their second game in the NFL, period. And that's not to mention that on the defensive side of the ball, the Falcons have just been atrocious at stopping the run all year long, which would be excellent for Lamar. He could get back his legs and his arm in this game. But as we know, we learned this from going into the Carolina Panthers game. The game needs to be played, and this team has, particularly on offense, had some issues, some kinks they got to work out. So we can't assume anything this year, but with that said, this offense with Lamar Jackson in there versus the Falcons defense looks like a heavy mismatch, one that is favored pretty highly in favor of the Ravens.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit more. So, overall, so the Falcons had Marcus Mariota, signed him for a year or 2 deal in the offseason over from the Raiders, if I recall. And, he played for them most of this year up until about 2 weeks ago. I think the last game was before their bye. I think their bye was 2 weeks ago. Ended up making the decision to put in Ridder instead, and now Mariota's on IR, so he's not even coming back. So it's the Ridder show moving forward. But yeah, you're right, Peter. It's going to be his second game. Made his debut against New Orleans last week at home. Ended up losing that game, but it was somewhat close. But yeah, definitely a recipe. I think the Ravens defense in particular, if they want to put on a show in front of the home crowd and kind of give this fan base a little bit of a jolt that everybody kind of needs, I think it's a good opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I hope that the bank is like a lively place. I could see, because of the holiday and because of the weather, people not wanting to show up and the current state of the fans, but and the team. But like, I really hope it's a good place. I hope it gives us like a home field advantage and is really rocking because the team could use a little bit of help, a little bit of support. And while I'm all team Dobbins of like, stick with us, it's going to be good once I'm back online and other things come online, etc. I just hope that we're able to see that, kind of keep up. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. Got to make sure that home field advantage is truly there. But at least the weather, like you said, Peter, I think it should be really noted. Windy, cold, dome team. It could actually be a piece to this puzzle. Seeing what I saw out of Ridder in his one at the start, I watched the whole game. I could see that being a problem for his game. Not the most accurate passer. Some of the balls sailed on him. I could see like if the wind catches it or just like Marcus Williams is him, like it could be really bad. There could be some turnovers. You could definitely see this defense or this offense struggle in the conditions.
Yeah, I did not watch the game, although I did see some of the highlights, and he looks raw to me. Timing seems to still be getting up to speed with the NFL level, and the Saints, credit them, they're a really good defensive unit this year, but we've seen them get had a couple times this year, so it's was definitely a difficult matchup, but not the hardest that he could have gone into this year, I would think. It was a home game too, so I would be surprised if Ridder is able to do much this game. Now, that being said, something that the Falcons did have a good amount of success with in that game was the run game. They were able to put up quite a few yards against the Saints, which, again, we saw the Ravens do that with Kenyon Drake, so take that for what you will. But Tyler Algier and Cordero Patterson, Algier in particular, both had very strong games on the ground, and while not enough to get the Falcons a win, it still allowed them to keep pace with the Saints in this game, and I believe that the Falcons prevented the Saints from covering. I think that was a 4.5 point spread, and the Falcons only lost by 3. So this offense through the air, it's Drake London and no one else, but they're starting to get something going with their run game, which, like we said, we know the Ravens' run defense has been stellar these past 5 weeks, but I think that's still something to note when we're looking at this matchup.
Somebody had to be so mad because when they covered, so they went for 2 to get to 18 points.
Did they?
And at first, it was a failed attempt, but they called a penalty, so they got a retry. And the little bowling ball that could, Algier, he was able to go around the edge and score after initially getting contact. That's my note for him. I watched, like I said, I was watching that game, and I really liked Algier, like as a best ball pickup, and I was drafting him a lot, and he apparently was getting hated on by the fan base. I didn't know this, but that's what I heard when I did some reading, and but he's a very physical runner. He breaks tackles. He can get a little bit of a head of steam when he gets moving. Not too bad for a 4th round pick. And I definitely could see him being a little bit of a problem if you don't, take a good angle and try to tackle him well. I think he could break an arms tackle. So keep an eye out for that. But I think overall our defense is pretty good about tackling. Cordell Patterson's still a multi-purpose tool in the offense. He was one of the first targets in the game. And he runs like real patterns because he has like that wide receiver background. Really weird looking wide receiver. Kind of looks more like a tight end. I don't think he tucks in his jersey. That's part of it too. He looks like a little like weird on the field. But yeah, Cordell, they built the offense a lot more around him last year than this year. But still, threatening. He got a touchdown. Algier got a touchdown. They're both pretty involved, but Algier looked like the lead back last week, and I don't know how that will play out. A note for people who really get into the fantasy football or deeper in the weeds. Caleb Huntley got hurt in this game, and he's done for the rest of the year. I think it's an Achilles. So, unfortunately, we won't be seeing him.
Yeah, I think Cordell's resurgence the last year, kind of a little bit in this year as well, although the offense has been a little scattershot, as we kind of been talking about. But Cordell's resurgence, I think, has been really cool to see. I think, the Ravens haven't had too much experience with him because he was over with the Vikings for a while. Although, as you know, I'm sure a lot of us remember that Snow Bowl game in 2013. Cordell Patterson was a big part of that almost comeback by the Vikings. Ravens could not tackle him to save their life on that one screen pass that ended up giving them the lead late in the game. But he's a cool dude. Just a really cool player. I love his story. He's definitely a guy I think the Ravens still need to watch out for a little bit. Definitely curious to kind of see how they want to use them and how the Ravens are going to be able to handle him. Like you said, Alec, they seem like they definitely bring two different skill sets between Algier and Patterson. Just in terms of, Patterson's got that vision. He's got the a lot more speed, where Algier is a little bit more of a power guy who can, be a little bit slower of a runner. But, two different styles that the Ravens are going to have to prepare for.
Another guy I'm really excited to watch the Ravens match up against in this matchup is Drake London. He has gotten a little less attention, I feel this year than guys like Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, and understandably, he started out really strong this year, but then he's had a string of games where he was pretty much non-existent in the stat sheet, and I really feel that's more to do with the Falcons' quarterback situation than his skill. And you look at Kyle Pitts and the drop-off he's had from his rookie year, where he broke the rookie receiving record for tight ends, and what he's been able to do this year before he went on IR. I think you can look at that, and that kind of backs that up, that the quarterbacking and the passing concepts in this offense is really letting down the receivers. But has had a little bit of a resurgence as of late, has scored some touchdowns, and definitely had was on the receiving end of majority of Ridder's passes when he was able to complete them. A big physical receiver. I think he matches up interestingly with our secondary. Again, he's not really going to be getting passes from a quarterback who's going to be able to utilize his full set of skills, but I still think that through the air, that's going to be a matchup to watch with the Ravens. One, I think that the Ravens will be able to contain him enough that it's not really going to be an issue, but still, I think something that to watch out for.
There's one play where London's arm was getting held by the defender, and he caught it with one hand against New Orleans. And I'm wondering if the flag didn't come out because he made such a good catch and it wouldn't have mattered. You would get denied or whatever. But I just thought it was kind of funny that he's a pretty good player. And one thing I would add to the matchup problems you're talking about, or the interesting matchups, obviously when Marlowe's on him, that's going to be fun because great corner, pretty darn good wide receiver, bigger guy, difficult target to fully slow down. But where I could see him really hurting us is when they move him into the slot, which I saw him do a couple times. Him going against Hamilton, while London lacks top end speed, he's still a faster player than Hamilton. I could see him being able to get separation. It could be an interesting matchup because they're both bigger guys. It could be fun to watch, but I do think London would have his against Hamilton, so I don't want to see it too much, and I do think they will lean upon that as much as one can as an offense. But, Ridder just, the balls weren't terribly accurate. His decision-making was a little slow. He just looked like a rookie. So I do think, it'd be a lot for him to have his Renaissance game in the second, week on the road against a pretty good defense. So I could definitely see us being able to take advantage of him a little bit. I was surprised how little advantage New Orleans took of him, but he did take a couple sacks they didn't need to take and stuff like that. So we'll see. We'll see how he plays out and how this offense looks. But, kind of similar to the Ravens, you look at the pass catchers for them, and they don't have anybody outside of London. You're looking at Hodges, the one guy with the name I'm not going to mispronounce right now. I don't know if you guys know the pronunciation. And it's just not good. Pitts is out for the rest of the year, so they lack that dynamic option. And one of the analysis I saw is that they run a lot of digs, crossers, and fades. That's about it. And these guys aren't getting too much separation. on those routes. And I just think the offense is limited, man. I think they're really going to have good work from the run game, and a good bit of difference making from London in order for them to have much of a ceiling. And I'd be surprised that the offense scores more than 13 points total. And even that seems high. I would say the standard deviation is probably at 8, for the amount of points that they'll score. I just don't think they're going to do much unless we give them really good field position. Offensive line wise, couldn't see too much. Like I said, Ridder did get some pressures. It's hard to say from one game watching them. Didn't see any super liabilities on their line. Didn't see anyone that seemed particularly dominant.
PFF really likes them, apparently, and this is public information because I've seen several Atlanta Falcons sites keeping tabs on this. Apparently, 4 of their linemen are in the top 10 for their position, and the other guy's 17th or something like that. Again, put that with what you will. But as someone who hasn't deep dived within their line, apparently from what I'm seeing, their line has actually been a pretty big surprise this year. They came in with the view that they would be one of the worst units in the league, but has actually been doing very well, particularly in run blocking. So there's that to consider in this game.
That actually checks. I believe it based on what I saw. They could be pretty good because, like I said, it wasn't there wasn't no key hole in it, and I did see some really nice run blocks. That's part of the reason why Algier had the success he had, but a lot of it was also him. But there were good blocks.
On the defensive side of the ball, this looks like a spot that this could really be a good spot for the Ravens. This unit has struggled mightily this year. There's only been 3 games this season where the Falcons have been able to hold a team to below 20 points in a game. You had them hold. That was that weird game with San Francisco where San Francisco was only able to score 14 points. That game still strikes out as a huge outlier on this entire NFL season. 28-14 Falcons. Who knew? But then they held the Commanders and the Steelers both to 19 points apiece. Now, granted, those 2 games were very recent. If I'm not mistaken, those were the 2 games they played before the bye week. And the Saints, despite the fact that they got up to a big lead, still only managed to score 21 points in that game. So, relatively speaking, their defense has been doing a little bit better in that state. But again, I mean, if you watch the film of that game, I don't know if Alec, if you noticed the same thing, but it seemed to me that there were running lanes open all day for the Saints to take. Plenty of receivers and tight ends running with no one around them. It just didn't look like a scheme that was very scary at all, and then looked very easy to move the ball against. And I might be putting that mildly.
Correct, Peter. I would call it relatively soft. And it almost felt like I've seen it before.
Yeah, right?
Trivia question. Who is the defensive coordinator of the Falcons? None other than the twice coming out of retirement, Dean Pease. And the crazy story about last game, though, he wasn't even the defensive coordinator because he was in a collision during warm-ups and had to get sent to the hospital. The guy should just stay retired. He's too old and frail.
Car collision or human collision?
Human collision on the field. Man. On the field. So he went to the hospital. He got released by the third quarter. Apparently, life's good, and I think he made it back in time to say something to the team after the loss. But really weird. But I guess there's a couple things to pull from it from the defense. Super soft coverage overall through the game. However, they were able to stop the bleeding. They let up 14 points in 7 minutes, and they got burned by Shaheed, and they also suffered a really long drive where it was just soft coverage, and Andy Dalton was able to methodically go down the field with Kamara's help and such, and all that. Like I said, they cleaned it up a bit, but honestly, there were still yards to be had. It was still pretty soft, and we should be able to run all over them. I mean, we run all over everybody, so it's not that interesting to say. But I could see us running for 250 yards. If we wanted to not pass this game, it could work out. I really do think that. They're not that big. A lot of their players are a little undersized. Like one of the players that stuck out the most to me was Grady Jarrett. And I looked him up. He's undersized, 6 foot, 300 pounds, like basically the same size but shorter, I guess, a little bit shorter, I guess, than Linderbaum. And, he had a good swim. He had some penetration. He had some splash plays, but he's just a smaller guy. You think about, Zeitler or Powers, and he's gonna get manhandled, man. Like I just think I'd be surprised if he did too much. So I do think that we could really eat him alive in the run game. The Ravens should definitely be able to run really effectively and be able to lean on that and actually score some damn points.
Yeah, fun fact about Grady Jarrett. He holds, along with 3 other players, the record for most sacks in a Super Bowl game with 3. But yeah, despite that, though, I mean, he's a good player, but I feel like that game was an outlier of his career. Not someone he's not on the level of like a Myles Garrett or a TJ Watt as a pass rusher. That's for certain. But he is among, if we're looking at players that the offense will have to keep track of while they're on the field, he's one of them for the Falcons. I know AJ Terrell is a guy that Falcons fans are really high on. Had a particularly good 2021. I think he struggled a little bit more this year, but again, we've seen this be something with the Ravens as of late. They go up against teams that have a up and coming young cornerback that they're getting acquainted with. But outside of that, really not much to say about the secondary. And I hate to say it, but that might be it for the star player watch on this defense. It's just not much here as far as established players go. And I mean, I think that kind of leads into some of the issues that they've been having this year. Is it's the scheme, but then it's also then not really having enough of the players to really run what they are running to proper execution.
Pass rush is not very good. They do have Ebiketie, who has 2.5 sacks, but I'm not sure how big of a piece will be in the game. I'm not sure if he's injured. I'm looking at it now to see if he's a part of any injury concerns. Yeah,
I was just going to add Grady Jarrett to me, I think, is almost kind of like a little bit better player at this point than Justin Matabuke, but probably would be a little bit similar, kind of his body type a little bit. I'm really curious to see how he plays up against Linderbaum, especially in pass sets, because I think that's probably his biggest asset, is just from an interior pass rush perspective. But yeah, as far as linebacker, I mean, they have a couple of guys there who coincidentally enough, were actually both in the 2018 draft, but the Falcons did not draft either of them. You've got Rashaan Evans, you've got Lorenzo Carter coming from Tennessee, and the Giants, New York Giants, respectively. But yeah, I mean, I think most of the NFL, I think there are a couple of really, really good linebackers, and then the rest are just sort of can be exploited in kind of the run game, or maybe a little bit undersized, but also not good enough to be in the kind of pass game. So they're doing okay. Obviously, a little bit higher in tackles for this year, but not like star players, I think, on this defense.
Yeah, AJ Terrell was a highly drafted corner in the 2020 draft, but just no interceptions this year. He had 3 last year.
Yeah, I'm just curious for the offense. Like, who's he going to be lined up against? Obviously, we're after last game, we're just looking for anybody to really add some more consistency to this pass game. But yeah, I mean, is he going to be lined up on Andrews most of the game? Is it going to be lined up on a certain side and just go up against Robinson for a handful of snaps? I actually don't know. Maybe you guys do if he travels around, or if we know that he plays on a certain side or not.
Not sure. Yeah, I didn't pay that close of attention to see where he was lining up when doing my watch.
Well, we'll certainly find out. But yeah, I definitely agree with you guys. I think in terms of the secondary on their side, I think he'd be the guy to watch out for. But obviously, I think we as Ravens fans are really looking just for just a turnaround from last week's game. Of just, can they just remove it from the system, flush it down the toilet, leave it in Cleveland, whatever they need to do, and turn this offense around a little bit. And yeah, obviously, I think we're looking at this matchup as a ripe one just for the Ravens to run all over them. But that being said, red zone offense, we're still looking for some more efficient red zone offense? Can we convert on more of these opportunities? Can we actually put more points on the board? And I do think, you have to have a pass game at that point. So, I'd look at this of, maybe the Ravens can get the tight ends involved a little bit more. I will say we didn't really talk about this against Cleveland. I didn't feel like the tight ends were really as involved as they could be in the passing game. We had a couple passes here and there, but it really wasn't a focal point. We talked about how Cleveland kind of maybe schemed it that way and to kind of take advantage of Huntley's sort of limitations as a passer. But that being said, it is on Roman, I think, to be able to counter that. And, if Huntley plays, we got to find ways to get them a little bit more involved. But if Lamar plays, I think the game plan's got to be the same. I think we really got to figure out how to take advantage of all of our tight ends that we have in this passing attack.
Yeah, it could be an interesting matchup. I did see Richie Grant make a good play when I was watching, and you might remember him from 2021's draft, second round pick, kind of highly drafted. He could be an interesting option and see if he'll be able to take away at one of our tight ends, but I definitely think it could be a bounce back game for them because, like I said, the whole offense is soft, or the whole defense is relatively soft about the way they play, and I could see our more physical, heavier body guys being able to be a big help in this game.
Score predictions and bold predictions? Anything else you want to say? Or?
Lead us into score predictions and bold predictions, Peter.
Looking at that, like we're saying, this is going to be a cold game. Should play into the Ravens' favor. Should mean that we're going to see a lot of running from the Ravens. And that's why I'm going to go bold here. Look, I think that this last game may have been a wake-up call for the team in some aspects, and we might see them... It might be counter what we would expect because cold weather is going to be hard to catch the football, but we might see them try and really showcase the wide receivers here. Again, you're looking at the last 3 games you're playing this season. This is your best opportunity to get this group right. The Steelers' defense has a good secondary. We saw that we can really run against them, but their secondary is good, and we know that the Bengals game is going to be tough. So I think we're going to see the streak ended with wide receiver touchdowns. I'm not going to say who's going to get it, but I'm going to say my bold prediction is there's going to be 2. There can be 2 wide receiver touchdowns on Saturday. And I think that this is going to be a get-well game for the Ravens. This seems like a kind of a scary score prediction as far as, betting money on it, but I'm going to go with it. I think the Ravens finally put some things together, fix some things. Lamar will be back. Ravens win 31-9.
All right, I'm up next. I really like that bold prediction, Peter, just in terms of Ravens looking at trying to find some answers for this offense, turn to the wide receivers. I'm going to go in a slightly different direction. I'm going to say that Mark Andrews gets a little bit more involved. We've been talking about a couple of weeks of just figuring out where is he? Is he getting double teamed? Is he hurt? What's going on with Mark Andrews? I'm going to say that he finishes with at least 50 yards and a touchdown this game. I'm going to say the Ravens get him a little bit more involved, particularly in the red zone, and he kind of helps the offense in that area. I do think this is a good matchup for the Ravens. But that said, 31, that's a lot of points for an offense right now. I feel like I'm going to go a little bit more of a lower scoring game. I'm going to say 16-9 Ravens.
Oh, gross.
I know. I hate it.
So if that happens, the Ravens push. They're currently favored by 7 points, and the over-under is 37 points. Here's what I'm thinking, guys. This is my bold prediction. It's so ridiculously insulting, but I think it could happen. It definitely is bold. I want to hit. Like if it hits, it'll feel good. I don't know if you can even bet on it, but the Ravens defense outscores the offense of the Falcons. I'm basically saying I think they're going to hold them to under 6 points, and the Ravens are going to find a way to score a touchdown on some sort of turnover. So it's really aggressive, but I'm basically more so saying only 6 points are going to be scored by the team. Now, the thing with the score prediction is like, I don't know, man. Like, is this the week that they get the 30 points? They have a 3 in front, and like the offense looks good, or is it going to be a 16? I'm going to go in the middle. I'm thinking they score like 24 points. And like, I guess if I'm saying the Ravens defense is scoring some of it, I guess they only scored 2 touchdowns. So not great. 24-6 Ravens. Well, let us know what your score and bold predictions are for this team. Hopefully you're as optimistic as we are, and the Ravens see it that way too, and deliver on the promises of a good performance where they're able to get on the right foot before they start playing the last 2 divisional games that will really decide their seeding and how this playoffs are going to go for them. You can follow us on Twitter, OneWinningPod, and on YouTube at OneWinningPod. And we'll be having a History Corner later in the week. Definitely make sure to check it out. They come out every Friday morning. Great way to start your Purple Friday. And otherwise, go Ravens, beat the Falcons, and have a great holiday season, as we'll talk to you after that.